Again, thank you for joining us for this first session of the AgrAbility National Training Workshop Encore webinars. Typically, we feature some of the more popular presentations from our in-person National Training Workshop. However, this year we had a significant weather emergency, and many of our presenters were not able to actually participate in the conference. So this year we're featuring some of the presentations that could not be held because of travel restrictions. Today's presentation is called the Motherhouse Project. It's a beekeeper client success story. And our presenter is David Wyllie from HoneyBee Home Crafters. My name's Paul Jones. For those who don't know me, I manage the National AgrAbility Project, which is headquartered at Purdue University. Some of you may not be familiar with AgrAbility. We are sponsored by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and our purpose is to assist virtually anyone in agriculture with essentially any type of disability. Every one of the AgrAbility projects around the country is a partnership between a land-grant university and at least one nonprofit disability services organization. And currently, there are 21 state projects around the country. Additionally, as I mentioned, there's one national AgrAbility project here at Purdue University through the Breaking New Ground Resource Center. And our partners on that grant include Goodwill of the Finger Lakes and Washington State University. If you'd like any more information about AgrAbility, about disability in agriculture, or if you'd like to view any of our almost 180 archived webinars, you can check out agrability.org. Again, our presenter today is David Wyllie. He's been a beekeeper for many years, but over time, the physically demanding tasks associated with maintaining traditional honeybee hives became increasingly difficult. With assistance from AgrAbility and the New Mexico Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, he successfully transitioned to a new form of beekeeping focused not on honeybees, but on solitary bees. David is also a storyteller trained by the Eskin tribe of Northern California, and he combines this talent with his academic background in systems geography and natural resource management to share the important story of bees and pollination. Today, David leads the Motherhouse Project, an initiative dedicated to improving crop yields through pollination services throughout New Mexico's Middle Rio Grande Valley. At this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, turn things over to David. He's going to be sharing some videos in addition to his PowerPoint, so he'll be moving back and forth between those. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing and turn things over to him.
Oh, good morning. Yes, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be. I'm in New Mexico, and we're just transitioning into afternoon. So I want to take a real quick minute to thank AgrAbility for the support they've given for this little project. We're very excited about the Motherhouse project, and I think it's one answer to helping us become kind of self-sufficient in New Mexico. We have a lot of challenges here, from lack of water to too much water to dry, sandy conditions to limited resource value for the kind of crops we have. So the Motherhouse project is geared toward that kind of environment. So we're going to start the presentation. So I want to say as well, the Motherhouse project, these are all original photos and pictures, and I'm talking over them because there's no script. This is all original, and the reason I mentioned that is that they're not perfect. So I want everybody to understand that this is an ongoing, active project. Okay, so we're going to talk about, we did the development with AgrAbility. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, a brief history. I want to say real quickly that you notice there was a package of seeds in there. So our intent is to not only provide the pollinators, but also provide kind of a forage area around the pollinators that they can become healthy, and we can actually grow those bees in New Mexico. Next slide. Okay, so yeah, so the thing is that many years I worked with bees, and I love bees, but they're not, what we're working with now are not honeybee. And I want to make that very clear that The HoneyBee is a whole nother project, requires a lot of physical work. It also requires specialized equipment. It also requires a lot of monitoring for disease and problems. So we transitioned into solitary bee, and the way that happened was through a little conference that uh, the New Mexico Department of whomever, the New Mexico Conference on Aging, where I met the New Mexico AgrAbility staff. And it's really exciting to be a part of that. I'm going to tell this little segment as kind of a story because I am a storyteller. And I believe that if you have the information already, that it's easier to transfer the information to other people, but not everybody understands what we're talking about. So a story is that you can buy into it. Hopefully, you will be part of it, and it will help us move ahead. Next slide. So we're continuing to grow, and I'm going to have a little video played in a second. But as a disabled beekeeper, it was really disheartening to be sidelined because there's no way that a small producer can compete with the large guys. And so I was kind of getting pushed away. So I went and we started making woodworking equipment. And I want to play this little video. Might give you an idea of why that I decided to go into this. You notice the prickly poppy right there? There we go. No sound.
Some solitary bees. Look at him. Look at that little guy. All crawling up inside that little prickly poppy. So the prickly poppy is about 3.5, maybe 4 inches across. Just so give you a reference. Look right to the top there, to the pistils. Gathering all that pollen. These guys are incredible. He's only like, what, millimeter or so? Love it.
And as my introduction stated, I do love it. And I love the action of natural systems. The way we're going to survive in the kind of climate that we have here, the changes around us, the impacts of population, is that we're going to have to change with it. So our view of the Motherhouse project is to not only bring in the recognition of the solitary bee, which are powerful pollinators. 95% of what they do is pollination only. They do not produce honey. They do not make hives. They have a mother. That's why we have the Motherhouse project. The females are not queens. So it must be really recognized early on that we're talking about a different approach to how nature provides pollinators. So I was up there at the conference on aging, and it's an honor to be an aged citizen. I think that it's very important that we honor people who are elders, the people who are going to help us, and we have many skills, and that's something I learned. And up there, I ran across the AgrAbility project, showing how you can do different tools for taking care of arthritis or reaching for things or digging in the ground or whatever it is. They have something for you, as well as technology products. So you'll see here that we have a little activity here on the screen. Can we go to the next one? Next slide. So what I want to say, here we go. Okay, so what we're going to have here is kind of why I was up there. When I went to the aging conference, I was really concerned that I was not going to be able to continue with the honeybees. And you'll notice in this slide, these happy people were at the farmer's market, and we were painting sides and parts of honeybee boxes that I would make and then produce to make hives. Now, I want you to notice that they're very happy people, right? And on the left-hand side, we're going to play this little video. And you'll notice in that video, one of the painted panels that came, I believe it might be this young man right here in this picture that painted on that. And then we put it up a couple years later.
Hey, these guys are looking pretty darn active. Right here, first part of September. We're going to be cracking this open here in a couple of days, probably tomorrow. Going to add a little feeder. Make sure they've got plenty of food for the winter. Nice to see you, little bees.
Okay, so I show this slide. Number one is to show the obvious smiles that we get, the happy participation working with bees. People really understand and appreciate bee activity. Another thing I want to mention is that you notice the size of those boxes. Well, when that thing is full of a frame, and these are 10 box frames, so that's 10 frames. That's a few hundred pounds each one of those full of honey, and they have to be picked up, moved around, taken apart. When I mentioned feeding in the video, we have to add that up the upper part in the wintertime. The bees go into the hives, and that's the basic honeybee cycle. Solitary bees don't do that. They're seasonal. So what they do is we work in the spring. We have the mason bee. That's our project. That's our model project, is working with the spring bees called mason bees, because we do the next slide. They use mud to seal up their little burrows. So to do this, the inspiration came from right there, occupational therapy evaluation. What I did at the aging conference is contacted AgrAbility and asked them if they had any help that I could get equipment to make the bee boxes, the honeybee boxes. And so a person came out, and I had grandiose vision. I was going to have the honeybee boxes. I was going to have a little farm community, and I also have a wood shop in my garage. And I was going to do all this together. And after the evaluation, we found that it's really better to stick more toward the wood shop, something I can do that I can control. I can put tools in there. So I started to change my idea. Can we do the next slide? So here we go. Look at this guy over here. I mean, come on. This is from the First World War, and honeybees have been around a long time, and the way to take care of them has pretty much been the same. You notice the box that guy's carrying around, the boxes around that house. That's basically the same box that I made, 150 years later, or however long it was. And it was promoted by the Army as a way for disabled soldiers to have a method of income. And it's pretty amazing that would be chosen. And I'm going to make a real side note on this. If you have a farm and you've got cattle, those are part of your farm, as are honeybees. Honeybees are considered as livestock. So I'm going to move on from that. Okay, let's go to the next slide. There we go. So here we are in a modern building. I talked with the DVR, which is in our area is called the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. It's not that easy. I want to tell anybody that. You walk into an office, sit down, you fill out a bunch of paperwork, put forth an idea. I had all the paperwork done by AgrAbility as far as the accessibility and what I needed to do so I could continue working in some shape, form. So they provide the funding. And you'll notice up on the right-hand side of this slide that one of our AgrAbility people and the person that helped me in DVR are wheeling out my new equipment. Needless to say, I was quite excited about that. So let's move on to the next slide here. So you see what it is. They provide the funding, and AgrAbility provides the planning, support, and resources. Okay, so what we're talking about here is there's a bunch of new equipment. What am I going to do with it? Well, I had to figure out a thing to do. So I tried first to make honeybee boxes, and I found it to be no different than how I made them before. And what came out of it is, if we can go to the next slide, I believe we'll see that. What we came out of it is, here I am in the little shop, and we got rid of all the old tools. And you'll notice there's a new bee box there ready to go out. And there's a picture showing these little tiny boxes. Well, those are a lot easier to make, don't you think? And so I made a bunch of different styles and selected the one in the middle, which is that little octagon shape. And the reason I did that is because you can pick it up with one hand. Next slide. So we brought in the new, and that allowed me to have the tools. There we go. So this is to help small farmers. Doesn't mean we can't help a large farm, but the idea is that we're putting forth better pollination, better crop yield. We're looking at places in the Rio Grande Valley where we have the traditional acequias, which are traditional watering from hundreds of years ago. And many of these areas are known by the families. They're known as the traditional water source for many small farms. And so gradually we're working into that area. It is also a very protected area because they don't want to see it change. And I don't blame them. What we want to do is we want to connect with that so that our project could be utilized by small farms all across the Rio Grande Valley. Next slide. So here's another idea. You see, okay, so look at a mason bee. It's pollinating as many as 60 honeybees. If anybody's ever been around honeybees, you'll notice they get stung. Well, you know, you don't get stung by mason bees. They don't sting. They live in a solitary nest, which we describe as nests with substrate. They can be decorated, they can be personalized. The social female is not a queen, that's a hive. Solitary female is a mother that has a nest. And what she'll do is hatch out, lay her egg, pack the area of the tube, which you'll see in a minute. And those tubes are then where the larva grows into an adult bee. And that bee could be male or female. As they hatch out, they leave the nest and they repeat the cycle. Now, each one of those little bees only lives a few weeks. So we're not talking about years and years of watching them. And look at the yield you can get. I mean, my gosh, we have all these things over here that are really a product of having those bees around. This is an area where I grew this, which is a 10-foot square. And look at the amount of food I got in a month and a half. It's pretty incredible, I think. So through the next slide. So this is the overview of the project. What we have is an orchard. You notice the flowers and the bees on the flower. Those are apples. And the mother houses sit around inside those apple trees, which I'll show you in a minute. On one side is a vegetable field, and on the other side is a place where the farmer has not cleared out the area around the ditch yet. Well, solitary bees like that. They like the nest substrate. So what we're doing is we're kind of showing how we can build that and maintain it, because really a farmer doesn't want a bunch of weeds around his field. He's usually going to clean them out. So we don't want to lose that habitat. On the other side, the vegetables, that's a different type of bee, and they do not nest in the mother house. They nest in the dirt. So it's part of an educational process to show how we can leave patches of soil around different fields, and we can get all sorts of pollination in a different way. And I won't go into that because that's another video. Let's go to the next slide, please. And we're going to show here is kind of the model. This is what it is. So there's the mason bee. There's the one I saw on the prickly poppy. There's people up in the corner, you'll notice, that are making and marking these little tubes. As in many animals, especially insects, the size of the occupation or the habitat that they utilize is extremely specific. It's throughout the spectrum. So these bees, the mason bees, they want 8-millimeter tubes. So we had to go through and we cut the tubes, and you can see them in the hand there. And then we get together, a bunch of us, we have tea and conversation, and we measure those tubes to get them as close to 8 millimeters as possible. We prepare them, and then we put them into the mother house boxes. Now the next slide, please. I can send you, look at that guy. I can send you all the information you would ever want about the bees, because you could look it up. All of us know how to use the internet, most of us. So you could look this stuff up. You can get all sorts of paper. You can get videos. But the thing is, this is just the information that we use. I want to just make note of this little bee. on the stomach area. You'll notice between the legs how they're very hairy. But what that bee does is that bee just plops on the flower. It just lands, bam. This they call it smack pollination, and all they do is they just crawl around on that flower, and they collect pollen like their whole body is completely covered with pollen, and then they make a nest out of it. So what they do is when they go in the tube, the female, the mother, lays an egg, and that egg is then a piece of nectar goes there, a little bit of pollen goes there, and then there's a way to separate it from the next egg. So you have compartmentalized eggs all along the tubes. Next slide. Now, I'm moving a little fast on this about how to know this kind of stuff because really it's visual. You need to be aware of exactly how you can view your farm. And it can be any farm. Look at this thing in the middle. A little area like that can produce a lot of flowers, a lot of vegetables, enough to actually add really healthy food to a family. So also on the other side, a big old stump there, nobody wants to be looking at that. And so, oh, cool. Sorry. I was doing the classic, how much time do I have? Sorry about that. But I have 30 minutes, so I can keep talking. But you notice that tree that fell over, we're kind of programmed to clean all that stuff up. But the bees like it. So we're going to get more activity if we allow some of that to stay around our areas, especially in urban areas. Urban areas become polluted with sprays and pesticides and nothing but lawns and grass and shrubs that don't flower at optimum times for the bees. So what we're doing is providing that because it's being taken out as we speak. Have the next slide, please. So you notice this little guy. Look at this. I'm going to talk for a second. We're going to have a video. But look at the guy in the middle there. That's a mama bee. That's a mother bee. And that photograph, I don't take credit for that one, but you notice on her belly, that's just yellow. That's where she's been out there smacking those flowers and picking up that pollen that she then utilizes to raise her young. So I'm going to show you a little video. We released a couple of cocoons like you see at the bottom of the slide.
So just wanted to show you that we're getting activity here on this little mother home. It's hard to see on a little video, but every now and again you'll see one buzz up and come on in there and in and out, and they're investigating, and I think they're hatching. So, yay.
Yeah, and I say yay because that's exciting. Imagine I put up this little house and expect something to happen. We're not quite ready for this, but that's all right. Yeah, there you go. What we're doing is we're trying it out. Now, there's a lot of literature about mason bees and how to release them and where to put them. Most of it's individual backyard. So what we end up with is no commercial value. It's just like, look at my pretty bee house, and 2 months later you check it again. What we're doing is we're raising these guys. We want bees that are from the area. So what we do is collect them in these mother houses and we release them back into nature in the spring. Can you show the next slide now? And what we started with was a little orchard. Now, real quickly, I'm going to say that this particular orchard is a family down south of us on the Rio Grande, and they're producing apples because they're going to have their own family brand of apple cider, which is pretty exciting. So what we're doing is helping them grow apples. So you can read the rest of it if you want, but here you can see where Debbie's showing a little house in the tree, and here up on the left-hand side, we're releasing some out of a bottle, some cocoons, and you notice another shot showing the mother houses. Okay, next slide, please. About 20 minutes, I think. I'm going to read this particular quote because I think it's really appropriate. In general, these bees spend most of their time in constructing and provisioning their nests, and we can help them by providing suitable nest substrates in farm landscapes. That's what the mother house is. We're providing suitable nest substrates for mason bees because of that tree, that apple tree right in the center of that slide is just beginning to blossom. So we're putting the boxes out ahead of time, and then the tree is going to blossom, and then we're going to add the cocoons, like you can see on the right side. Next slide. So just a series of slides showing the progression. We started out with bare trees. The trees began to flower. We started monitoring the boxes. You'll see that Debbie, that's one of my helpers, she has the box up in her hand there, and then we show the tubes inside of it. Now, in this case, you see where we shipped them in from FedEx because we were not ready to allow natural release. But now that we've done that, we've committed to the farmer to help him pollinate his apple trees. And so that's exactly what we did. Now, from this point on, we'll harvest our own bees. Next slide. So what you see here is showing that we have the flower just beginning to flower to the time when we get the boxes. Now on the left side, the most interesting thing, there you go. There's a mason bee tube filled up with larvae, which are incubating during the heat of the summer. So they're not out, they're not running around, they're not looking for food. They're just staying within about 100 feet, and they hole up in those tubes that we prepared, that group of people. You want to do the next slide? I'm kind of showing you how to do it here. So what we have here is a small video. I think you should look at it because it shows the why we're doing it. You want to do that, Julie?
So you notice the apples in there.
Yeah.
That's the reason we're doing these bee boxes, because they pollinate the flowers that make those apples.
Yeah, those apples. And those apples are pretty important to that farmer because, you know, he spends a lot of time in this orchard, a small amount of individual time, but he also spends a lot of money out there. And if he can get a better yield, that's our purpose. So that's why we show the trees are doing well, the box is in the middle of the tree, and we're getting good apple production. And I put the picture of the flowers because we're going to be moving these boxes that you see in the slide. We have to move them out of the orchard. One thing about orchard management, there is spraying, there is activity that could be harmful to the bees, plus climate change. And I'm going to throw that out there. I don't mind saying it, but our summers are hotter. Our weather patterns have changed. And if we don't keep track of it, we're going to lose our bees, we're going to lose our apples, we're going to lose our production. So let's move on to the next slide before I talk too much. Whoop, there we go. So what we have here is, okay, on the flower you see there, it's got little cuts in it, little half moon cuts. Well, that's showing that already the summer bees are coming out, because what they will do is cut a little half moon shape out of a particular leaf or a flower, and then they put them inside the tube, which you see in the middle. And then there's a chemical you can put on it that attracts them to go into those. So we have to look for that evidence. We have to enhance the habitat, and we have to apply attractant. And you notice also the lemon thyme that's there in that slide. Well, who doesn't like lemon thyme? But plant lemon thyme because the bees love it. So let's go to the next slide, please. You're going to see a couple more flowers. You see how they're cut, and that's an indication that we have active solitary bees in-house. They're right there. They're making their little incubation tubes active. In this case, they may be using something different than our tube, but because we observe it, we place a box there. Let's go to the next slide, please. And I have about 10 minutes, right? 2 minutes? Oh, 20 minutes? Well, let me slow down just a minute. Okay. So you'll notice that the cut, this is from a magazine. So I did not take this photo, but you'll notice that it's the same shape I was showing you. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the shape. You notice there's a little mother with her pollen on her belly. And over on the other side, you'll see what we're looking toward, which is summer crops. So they're in the same family. They just have different seasons and different methods by which they produce their young. So the most interesting thing about the leafcutter bees is that they're out in the summer, and they don't have one generation. They may have as many as 3 or 4 generations, depending on how much forage there is. Anybody knows about bees? They need to eat just like us. And what these guys forage on is the pollen and the nectar in a flower. They don't forage on honey. They don't forage on water. They don't forage on dog food. They forage on pollen and nectar. Nectar is what they feed their young. So I want us to notice that a unique feature of this family is the females collect pollen not on their legs, but on the hairy undersurface, the scopa of the abdomen. And that's what I'm showing in that one slide. Again, I do not take credit for those 2 upper slides. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we want people to participate. So that panel there, that busy little panel with a little bee box in front of it, that was our project right there. That was the summer or the spring project. And if you were to look closely, you will see all the things I just described. Where we're putting out the right size tubes, we're selecting the orchard, we're moving the boxes at the appropriate time, we're adding the cocoons at the appropriate time, and then we want to show people. So what we did at this point is we handed these boxes, we took them out of the trees, we collected the tubes from there, which have mason bees in them, and then we're storing those for next spring, and then we give the boxes out to families, and then they can have them in their own gardens. So we'll continue the process with summer bees. Can you go to the next slide, please? And you'll notice here we are, giving them out. Now, this wonderful group of people funded our first project, and they're very happy. Look how happy they are. I mean, bees make you happy, man. And if you know that you're going to eat a good apple, my gosh, put the bee out there. And they're not going to hurt you. They don't care much about you. All they're going to go after is the pollen in the flower. And so here we are holding one of those boxes. I don't know where it is right now, but if you want another presentation this winter or spring, I'll show you exactly where they go, because we keep track of every single house, and every single house gives us an idea of how many bees are going to be hatched out of this, and how we can take care of them, and when we're going to release them again. You want to? I still have 10 minutes, so let's do the next slide. I hope you guys don't mind me talking over myself here. So what we do is, see, here's the substrate is really the most important part. The bees are looking for a particular size tube. They're looking for a particular shaded area. They're looking for a place where they're going to get a lot of flower activity, because they don't range. They don't go miles and miles. They only go 100 feet from their little house. And so you have a 5, 6, 10 tubes with active mothers in there. Then what you're going to have is only 100 feet or maybe 200 feet max where they're going to be collecting their forage, where they're going to be eating. So we need to make sure that we collect that we put our boxes in a place where we can collect them, where they've had plenty of food around the garden. Okay, next slide. Sorry. Yeah. I got distracted. Look at me. Okay, I got distracted. Here we are collecting for the fall, you see. Now the idea is, you notice those tubes are a little bit bigger than the other ones, or a little smaller, some of these. And so this is an area where we have remember that box over there on the right side? That was where we had our spring bees, and we collected from there, and we put out we're putting out some new tubes for the summer. I think there's a video here, isn't there? Right there.
So hopefully we have some little bees in there, and we'll release those in the spring.
So you get the idea. And I'm talking to a bunch of people here, but I see a screen. I don't see your faces. I can't shake your hands. I can't give you a hug, but I can tell you about the bees. And so what we're doing here is just the question is, can we raise mason bees to be released the following year? The value of that to us is that in our in our eyes, what you have is the ability to circumvent. For instance, the trees are going to flower by day length. The temperature in our area is very up and down, basically. Sometimes it's very warm in February. Sometimes it's as cold can be with 4 feet of snow. Sometimes in April, we'll have cold weather and snow. So what you end up with is the trees will flower, but they're not flowering very well because of the weather. So what we do is we add the bees at the appropriate time. We don't put them out in mid-February when it's really cold. We put them out when it's appropriate, when the temperature's up. That's how we judge when the bees go out. Pardon me. So what we do is we place them, we harvest them first, we store them, and we place them out in the spring, and we monitor them. And hopefully, if we have 100 tubes full of little mason bees, next year we're going to have 200 tubes because we're keeping track of this the whole time, and we're interjecting our own management skills to try to get the best population of bees we can have, which is going to really increase the crop yield of where those bees are. Can we have the next slide, please? So here you go. This is the fun part. What we've done here, I want you to notice that on one side we have the Feed the Bees wildflower mix. Our purpose is to regrow the landscape, basically, and not just crop yield, but also flowers. Little wildflower patches, little crop rows where you put flowers in between the crops. All that really maintains the bees themselves. And if we can get bees to just be making new bees all the time by adding flowers to it, by putting a box here and there, by calculating that, keeping track of it, putting them out each spring according to the weather at that time. If we can do that, then what we're doing is we're increasing the yield, which means more fruits and vegetables. It also means that we're going to increase the area in a natural way that allows us to keep track of the food that the bees need, which is flowers. So we're combining those two ideas together. Instead of just habitat restoration, we're combining the bees into that equation so that we have habitat restoration as well as bee pollination restoration. And I think it's going to be very successful myself, but that's a judgment call. So as a true scientist, I will say that there you go. What you see here is information we put out, which gives things you should know about the solitary bee. And we're probably coming up on our live demonstration here. So I very nicely, I'm getting these wonderful cues from the people here at AgrAbility. So let's do the next slide, see what happens. Watch the arrow. Okay. Now what we're going to do is going to have a live demo. Am I going to see this?
Thank you to those that have submitted questions so far. We do have several, and when we get done with the demo, we'll launch into those. If you have more, please go ahead and enter those in the chat, or you can use the raise hand option when we get to that point.
That's great. That's great. I love questions. There we go. Well, there's just a slapshot shot of one of the little mother houses. Now, just to back up real quickly, I'm gonna describe this guy. So when I went to the occupational therapist through AgrAbility, she assessed my disability of grip and arthritis and how it was difficult to do things. And so what I did is develop, as you can see, you can hold this little guy in your hand. So you can walk around with this little bee box in your hand. So it's not that hard to place them around in different locations, and it's not that hard to make. They're quite cool, I think. You'll notice a little bit on the tube, that little paint. You'll see that dark purple paint. That's us marking the tube. I wish I could point at this stuff, but you'll see. Oh, I can point. Oh, so right here, you notice how we've got larger right there. That would be the mason bee, and we've got smaller right here, which will be the leafcutter bee. So we're right in the process of doing that. And we could fill this box up, but I prefer to leave the bottom open so we can monitor things like pests and disease. Sometimes we have to put a little bit of water in there when it's really dry conditions to give them a startup. So you want another. So what we're going to do is transfer here. I'm going to show you a couple of really interesting things. What I've done is collected the tubes, and you can see the active bees. Now, for a person like me, boy, I'm excited. And you can imagine how excited I am. So is it there? Here we go. You see the mud in there? I didn't do that. Let me see. There we go. I'm sorry. Down? Okay, I have a helper here. There we go. There we go. Okay. Well, I'm just a novice here, so notice the mud in there. Okay. Well, that's a critical feature. When we put it in the orchard, they do water the orchard. And that mud was a little clay-like, which is very good for or normal for our valley. So you see how the bees have covered up their the hole, and they over summer in that little incubated area and produce new bees, which we release in the spring. Then you'll notice that we have the other tubes are smaller. Do it again. Here we go. These are for the leaf cutter. Feel like I'm not much of a video game player, so I feel there we go. This way. Oh, thank you. Okay, you notice the difference in size. That's what I want to show you. These are not filled up with mud because these are leaf cutters. And what they'll do is they'll pack it with all sorts of vegetative material. And we'll be able to showcase this in the fall when we start unloading from those individual boxes. Another thing about having them in individual gardens is that we have about 3 generations of bees that'll harvest in these smaller ones. It's a minute behind me, isn't it? So what we'll be able to do is possibly take some of these tubes and replace them with newer tubes. So that'll just give you an idea of what we're doing. Another thing we do is we have this company that we work with that has this little, right here, this little spray attracts the leafcutter bee. Now, I truly believe that they'll come anyway. It's kind of like that baseball movie was, you build it and they will come. So the thing is once we set up their habitat and their substrate, I do believe we're going to get bees there. And I strongly encourage people to plant lemon thyme and put it all around their garden, because the flowers are not only great forage, but the scent and the oils from the lemon thyme are really critical for the attraction of the bees. So we got more. Is that it? We're almost done. I have 10 seconds. Oh, I got time for questions, but let me throw this one out first. There you go. Feed the bees. Now, every single mother house that's given out to somebody, they get a packet of seed. And the beauty of it is I have photos of these, but they're coming, and I'm a technological dumb person. So not that I'm stupid, I just don't know which buttons to push. So what we have here is there are photos coming where people have put these in pots around their patios so that they have food for the bees. These particular packets come from the Xerxes Foundation. And if anybody wants to query me, especially by email, I'd be happy to send them a copy of the Xerxes Habitat evaluation form. And what you do is you do that. We'd like to see a copy of it, of course. What you do that is you fill out a form, about 5 or 6 pages, and it gives you an idea of what's around your own house, what's around your own farm, where you live, what kind of forage is there. The critical part here is that we create an environment that's conducive to harvesting bees. And on that note, I think I'd like to open it to questions. Hey.
Okay, thanks so much, David, for that interesting presentation that I knew very little about. And I think you definitely raised some questions. We've got quite a number in the chat. Again, if you have to leave at the top of the hour and we don't get through all these, please feel free to join us back for the archived version so you can see and hear all the answers to the questions. So I will just start at the top and read through here. Some of them are multi-part questions, like the first one. So if you need me to read part of it again, I'll plan to do that. So Anthony says, what are the dimensions of the bee houses? How deep? I mean length. How deep are they? Is there an ideal size? Is there an ideal distance off the ground they should be?
Those are great questions. And of course, I have a cheat sheet at my shop, so I would love to be there to look at it. But your dimensions lengthwise are from 6 to 8 inches deep, and that depends on the size of your tube. You don't want too much space between the front of the box and the tube itself. That brings in spiders and other things. So you want it as close to the front of your tubes, at front of the boxes, as necessary. You mentioned about the dimensions, 3 1/8 width with a 45 cut to make the hexagon, excuse me. Now, like I said, I usually have a cheat sheet on that and I have the equipment set up. So you have to apologize if it doesn't work for you. If you want to make one, I encourage you to do that. Please send us a photo of it. We would love to see it. Attach it to an email. Try to follow our procedures because we're spreading this around the world. We're going to save the world with mason bees. So I just want to throw that out there. Please do that. Was there a third part to that?
Yeah, what's the ideal distance off the ground they should be?
I don't know. I usually say chest high, but you know what? Some people are smaller and taller and all these things. So we're looking at around 3 to 4 feet is where you would put your particular box, and you want to have them protected from hot sun, cold, from wind, stuff like that, because it's a habitat. So what you want to do is maybe put it in, just lodge it in a tree. You saw an example of that in the slide. I always submit with every box that we make. I submit just wraps, like bungee cord, something like that, just to put it up there.
Okay, great. Okay, Roberta says, David, this information is very interesting. Do you have any recommendations for urban farmers and gardeners who are interested in getting started with bee houses and creating a suitable habitat for native bees? Guidance on site selection, maintenance, or plants that support bee populations?
Well, I'd like to publish a book for you. What I will say is, yes, you're providing the forage already. If you have a garden, if you are next to a farm, if you're next to a forest, a ditch, a roadway, any of those places, you already have the habitat. So you're going to have bees there. And so my suggestion would be that you start with the box because we're talking about mason bees. Now, not all solitary bees nest in the box. Just remember that. But you start with the box, you put it up there, you put the appropriate tubes in it, and then see what comes. If that's how you want to manage it, that's not a problem. What we're doing is we are growing native bees. And the reason for that is there's a big push that I see right now in the home garden area where they send you the cocoons. And they're from Washington State or some of them from Minnesota, other places like that. Now, remember in the talk, I was saying that you're only talking about 100 feet, 100 yards max. So that's a bit far for the bees to propagate. So I suggest we center on raising the ones that are around us and repopulating with those. And I think you're going to limit disease, you're going to limit problems, you're going to get healthier bees. That answer the question?
I think that does. Good. Thank you. Next question from Laura. How do you know it's a solitary bee, other than it being by itself and rubbing its belly on a flower?
Well, what number one is it doesn't sting you.
Okay.
So yeah, so if you grab a honeybee, what happens? Bam, you get the old thorn in the hand. If you touch a wasp, same thing. If you touch a bumblebee, you're not going to get that much of a sting. Those are solitary bees, by the way. They're kind of in the middle because they do have colonies. But the way you know those things is that if you notice a bee-like insect that is sitting on your flower that is not a honeybee. Honeybees are fairly large compared to the solitary bee. If you notice a flea type insect, take a minute. I mean, don't just go by and say, there's a bee there. No, take a minute. Look at that bee and look to see if it's furry, if it's got dark coloring. Some of them are light tan, some of them are yellow. They're all different sizes and shapes. So you got in New Mexico, we have about 400 species. So I'm not going to go through the whole of that, but I do know you can contact the New Mexico Department of Agriculture, I believe it is, the cooperative extension, and they have a wonderful publication that you can get from them, and you can identify bees in New Mexico. It's like 400 pages. Well done. They spent a lot of time on it. I would suggest doing that if you want to know what kind of bee it is. It's very easy to see what a honeybee is. Seriously. So if you start with that, start with the most obvious and then go back from there, you'll start finding solitary bees.
Okay. Sonia asks, where can we get the wildflower mix?
Well, this particular one, oh, I can't show it now. Well, I can too. I'll put it right up here next to my face. There it is. What I did on this one is that there we go. I searched, and what I found was this company, American Meadows, AmericanMeadows.com. I could send this to you by email, a lot easier. But if you question by email, use either of the two emails that are provided. I can send you to all different sources. Now, it's really important that you pay attention to what you're getting. If you buy these particular ones, they have California poppies in it, which is wonderful. Just wonderful. They're beautiful flowers. But if you ever go to California, if you go in August, you're not going to see California poppies out there because they're an earlier blooming flower. So when you have California poppies, that's ideal for mason bees. You see what I'm talking about? Because they're going to come up earlier. Does that answer the question? You should email me. I can send you lots of literature.
Okay, we'll plan to put maybe your last slide with your contact information up at the end here. Next one from Audra says, how do you overwinter the bees?
Call the refrigerator. Do I have to elaborate on that? Because, basically your normal fridge, not the freezer, but the normal fridge is about 40 degrees, somewhere in there. So that's what you want to do, is keep it around that temperature range.
Okay. Comment from Tim. He says, I'm a veteran with 100% service-connected rating in Southeast Texas. And he says, I'm on a third year of a 5-year ag history building with my county with native solitary mason bees.
Nice. Send me stuff. Yeah, send photos. Am I hearing that right? That you already have a program?
That sounds like he's involved in something there.
Yeah. My question back would be, are you growing your own bees or are you importing them?
Okay. Next from Anthony, how adaptable are these bees to global warming, climate change, and drought conditions on the phenology between these bees and the flora they rely on? This is a multi question.
No, that's okay, because we're in multi-world right now.
Okay.
And so we're not just affected by climate change, but we're also affected by land use, and we're also affected by how things operate in a farm or in a garden or whatever it is you're doing. So I think I brushed over that very, very carefully and kind of generally, is that our program, what we do is we put the bees in the fridge. I'll give you a simple explanation. We put the bees in the fridge. Mason bees like it at a certain temperature, around 50 degrees. Okay, so if you're going out in February in New Mexico, 50 degrees is pretty high. So it's probably not conducive to running your mason bees out there at that point. But it's also what we are pollinating in this particular model, this particular program, are apple trees. And apple trees have a day length. That's how they figure out when they're going to flower, by day length. Okay, so I think that's pretty accurate for the apple tree because, the earth doesn't change that much, but the temperature changes dramatically. And so what you can have is apples blooming and it gets really, really cold. And the mason bees are going to have a hard time with that. They're not going to fly around very much. They're not going to have a lot of blossom. They're going to prefer a little later date. So what we do is we monitor the natural conditions. We try to adjust our release to the most appropriate time to put the bees in the orchard, and then hopefully we get good pollination. I'll tell you the truth, we had lucked out this first time because you saw the little pictures of apples. Those apples have only been in there for, or the actual apples themselves, has only been for just a few weeks because we waited a little bit of time before we released the cocoon. So the trees were in full bloom when we released the cocoon. The bees only lived to be, they're only a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks max. So that was our bloom time. You see what I'm talking about? You have to pay attention. You have to look at what you have and be glad you have it. And then look at how things change around it and keep a log. Keep a written log about what you're doing. Nobody's going to fault you for that. And then refer to that the following year. And if you don't mind, take a photo of it, send it to us, send it to our graphic department, and we will be happy to look at it and put it on a map for you. That's part of my training is mapping. So we'll put it on a map from wherever you're located. We don't mind doing that. And then you can get an idea of how things change around your particular location.
Okay, sounds good. Laura asks, how many people are part of the project? Is it only farmers? And where did the project take place? In Bernalillo County? I'm not sure I pronounce Alcalde. I guess that's the name of a county. I'm not sure.
That's okay. It sounds like, I want to ask, I'll just throw it out there. Is this a New Mexico person? Because we're a little bit protective of our counties, and Bernalillo County is the largest economic county in New Mexico. And so it's not in Bernalillo County. It's in Valencia County, and it's a small orchard run by a particular family down in an area that is just being developed by small farms. So that's our model is right there. But where the summer bees are going are individual gardens, which are people with their own gardens that help with the project. They volunteer with the tubes. They have been monitoring the bees with us. So we have, I would say, probably 20 or 30 people that are actively involved. Not every day, of course, but just occasionally. And what we're doing is passing those boxes to those people. There's a caveat. Number one is we want to keep track of them. So they're going to have to photograph when they have their barbecue. They got to photograph it. If they talk about it, they got to record it. They're going to do all that. And then we're going to come harvest in the fall and store those bees. And next fall, next summer, we'll be able to give those out again.
Okay. Audra asks, what are the tubes made from?
Oh, that's a great question. Sunflowers is a good choice. The pithy kind of cane-like tube. The ones that you see in the photographs right now are mostly cane or bamboo with another one. That kind of stuff.
All right. Laura asks, how sturdy are the bee boxes with the nasty winds we've been getting? Are the boxes reusable? Yes, are the boxes reusable, and do you only need to buy tubes each year?
I'm sorry to laugh at that because that is true. The wind has been just horrendous. They're pretty strong. They're glued and stapled. They're small, so you can put them in protected areas. And that's one of the things I mentioned I believe, in the presentation, was you want to place it at a certain place where it's protected a little bit. So inside the tree is a good place. In the crotch of a medium-sized tree is a good place, and you want to strap it tightly. Now, the reason I laughed is because I gave one to sold one to somebody that lives in Maine. They got all excited about it, and they put their little box up about chest high. Okay, that's where the bees are going to be most active, and they had a freeze, and the freeze caused the tree to do some kind of convoluting thing or whatever, and that box fell out and hit the ground, and some of it came off. So that's what I did. I took that and redeveloped the program a little bit to make sure that didn't happen again. So there is that danger, of course, and we'll be happy to fix it. If you get one from us, we'll fix it up for you, no problem.
All right. Audra asks, can mason bees and honeybees live in the same yard?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
They're non-competitive.
All right. Thalia asks, do leaf cutter bees like dahlia leaves?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's an honest answer.
All right. Let's see. Anthony says, I know honeybees are attracted to lemongrass essential oil as a lure.
Correct.
Just a
That's when they're swarming. So can I talk? Okay. So understand with honeybees that when they swarm, which is spring, okay, I'll just throw that out there. When you put a box out to collect the swarm, you put lemongrass and lemon thyme. Remember, I mentioned that lemon thyme is the oil is attractive to bees, so that's what you use to attract the swarm for your second hive.
Okay. Brian asks, can you speak about the accommodations you use to help you perform your work? Were there any tools or technologies that were worth a try, but ultimately not useful to you?
Yeah. For some reason, we got a metal cutter, and it didn't apply to us. But what we're going to do is it's still in the box. We're going to figure out a way to make a mold so we can make the bee boxes more uniform and a little more rapid. So the thing that helped us the most was having a skill saw, which was it's a beautiful tool, and it's got the ability to adjust in all different angles and shapes and sizes, and it's very easy to use. And that's the most important part. We also have a way to drill the holes and set it up very easily, so we can hold the tubes and drill the holes in, because they have to be pretty dynamic as far as 6 millimeter, 8 millimeter, 12 millimeter. You got to be pretty right on with those.
Okay. We are almost to the end here. Jen asks, as a bee, I think you've probably addressed this already, but just to review, as a beekeeper of honeybees, the brood larvae have to be kept at a certain temperature to survive until they hatch. Do mason bees or leafcutter bee larvae have to be stored or incubated at a certain temperature until it's time for them to be released?
Okay, excuse me, but that's a great question for one reason. The honeybee raises their brood and then stays inside the house, right? If you raise bees, you would know this, that they make a little bubble basically inside the bee box, and they fan it the whole winter, and they keep that at a steady temperature of, I believe, in the mid 90-degree area. You could check on that. That's what they do. That's how honeybees survive. They keep their brood alive. They also change when they hatch out, because they hatch out every 3 weeks to a month, or they live about 3 months. And so what you'll end up with is you'll have I call them warrior bees. And if you notice, if you start looking at your honeybees in later fall, when they start hatching out, they're slightly larger, slightly more aggressive. They're just a little bit different bee, and that's when you don't want to mess with them. Right at that point, then you can get in there and look at them. So that's what they do. They stay inside the hive. Remember, it's a hive. All right. Solitary bees, on the other hand, wintertime, you could leave them outside. I mean, they will grow outside. I can't give you an exact temperature, but we found that the temperature of most refrigerators is, I believe, it's around 42 degrees. That's perfectly safe for the mason bees. What it is if you were to put them in your living room while you're watching Christmas movies with a nice fire, you're not going to want your house to be 42 degrees. And so what they're going to do is they're going to hatch out. So just remember that from the tube. So you want to keep them cool until you release them.
Okay. A couple more. Would you suggest using iNaturalist to identify bees when you see them on plants and you don't know what they are? Also, are there any known iNaturalist citizen science projects regarding mason bees? And I didn't know what iNaturalist was, but looks like kind of a social network related to nature.
I would love you to contact us. We'd be involved in a second. And the thing is because it takes many eyes, many people. We're looking at these little tiny guys that only come out for a short period of time, and they're very, very important for the natural growing seasons. And when you look at urban settings, like I keep glancing out the window here, and what I see is rock and concrete and bushes that have limited flowering time. So you're not going to really see a lot of solitary bees in that, but you'll find them. So these kind of projects that you're mentioning are really critical for us tracking them. But we'll be happy to work with you to put them on maps so you can electronically put the information out. I think everybody should know this. It's not private information. It sounds like public information. I like that a lot.
Okay. One more question. Are mason bees averse to plastic? Tubes could be easily printed or easily 3D printed.
I'm sorry, would you run that by me again?
Are mason bees averse to plastic because tubes could be easily 3D printed?
I got you on that. Actually, no. They go to the size of the hole. That's the most important critical factor. I wouldn't want to do plastic, and to tell you the truth, I wouldn't want to do 3D printing either. And I say that for a very personal reason. I like to look at cane and cut up cane and feel it in my hand and make sure it's 6 millimeters or thereabout. I like to put it in the box and know that it's a natural material that the bee is going to recognize like it would if we never had a 3D printer. Now, I'm not discounting that. I'm just saying that this is an opportunity to get your hands in nature without danger. Put your hands in nature and get a direct result and a product that you can be proud of. It's not just about the tubes or the boxes or the bees themselves. It's about the combination of all that, along with the flower seed, along with the trees you put them in, along with the orchards. You know, who people look around. You've got pear trees in yards. You've got cherry trees in yards. You could be putting your boxes out according to your neighbor's cherry tree and getting great cherries. So I'm just saying that yes, you can do. They don't mind. As far as I know, they don't mind plastic. We do use paper fillers sometimes to make them smaller for the summer bee. I don't like doing that because it can create disease. The particles of paper kind of sitting there and they biodegrade, and natural wood doesn't. So that's my take on it. So I'm pretty particular about what I put in my box.
Okay, well, that's all the questions. So thanks so much, David, for sharing your information and your wisdom and experience. Thank you to everybody that gave questions today. And I think Julie's going to put your contact information up there. We appreciate that. Thank you, Julie, and everybody at New Mexico AgrAbility for helping with the
Thank you, Julie
technology
and
aspects
Jesse.
today. Things worked pretty well. For those out there that are still interested in attending our webinars, the next one is scheduled for next week, July 7th. It is on mental health and agriculture, the OT perspective and practice. If you're interested in attending that, please check out, you can go to agrability.org. There's a link on the homepage under the latest news, and you can find out how to register. Again, we're recording this, we'll be archiving it and then letting you know when it's available. So again, thank you, and don't forget to fill out your survey. Appreciate your input on that. And with that, we wish you a good day.
Good day.